The meeting will be live streamed for public viewing and will be uploaded after the meeting together with the decision sheet showing the decisions taken in the meeting. The press and public will be asked to leave the proceedings after the public business if there is a requirement to consider the exempt appendices. I've just had a conversation. We have a number of questions from members of the public today on two items. I've been sent them. I'm going to read them from the chair. I think one member is present, but and is Ms. Gordon on the line there?
No, you'll be reading out.
Anyway, I'll be reading out those questions. We also welcome Councillor Binny Lubbock, who will be, it was obviously a member of the council, and will be putting some questions to an item that he has interest in. He's also submitted a list of further questions, which I've forwarded to the relevant officers, and we'll ask for a written response to those. And could those also be copied to members of the committee? All right, so I've bunged that in there. Yeah. Apologies for lateness have been received from Deputy Mayor Bramble, who's hoping to join the meeting at 5:30. I think everyone is present. Yeah. So if we could go then to the unrestricted. So there isn't any business that I've been with, though we have some late items on the confidential agenda. Yeah. So we'll deal with them. Okay. So are there any declarations of interest? No, or new declarations. Right, okay. So,
excuse me, as a member but not a member of the panel, do I need to declare interests for this as well?
If you have an interest, yes.
I'm a member of Ad Block Hackney, which is a campaign group in Hackney.
Okay. Okay, so deputations, unrestricted minutes. So can we have a? So the agenda is slightly a different order from the note. So I've done somewhere. So I'm here, I think. Unrestricted minutes of the previous meeting. Yeah. Can we look at the? I won't go through them unless anyone's got an issue with that. But can we agree them as a true record? First of all,
agree.
Secondly, we have now there's a new thing as an actions tracker. So we've got effectively matters arising list. And we'll note there that we've had because of the additional information we often ask for and other actions, I thought it'd be useful to introduce some sort of system of more formally recognising them. And I know we've had the response from Peter Lovell in respect to our question on housing repairs, but the other matters are outstanding.
Oh, actually, the update is agenda item 9 on communal heating.
Yeah.
As we understand it, that's outstanding, but all the other matters have been dealt with.
Okay, so
since the printing of the agenda, yeah.
Can we make sure that members have been copied into those where appropriate?
They have been, yeah.
Okay.
Have been, yeah.
So you're telling me I'm not reading my email? Okay, I bet there's only just anyway. Stop making comments. Okay, then. Yeah, the other issue I wanted to raise at this stage. Mr. Adjuluri and myself have 3 meetings for this, which have been up to now informal. And I was hoping going forward to formalise them slightly and have them a bit earlier than we did. So we're looking at the Tuesday before, like 6 days before the meeting. And I will invite other members of the committee to that as well. And hopefully we can have a representative from the committee section there as well. But I haven't discussed that yet. So just to note that as a way of administrators going forward, so we can hopefully be a bit more, more directed and more effective committee.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us then to item 7, the integrated mental health network contract approval, and this is going to be introduced by Jennifer Milmore and or Lola Alloway. All right, so I'm advised that in the published supplementary pack, you will find additional Appendix D, which is exempt, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Appendix D is not exempt then.
But
Okay. Okay. And there is also an exempt appendix with it. Item 13. Okay. So, is it Jennifer Milmore?
Hi.
Hi.
Would you like me to just do a quick summary?
Well, you can assume the members have all read the paper. So I guess it's the very, very quick summary, and anything you wanted to add or particularly draw attention to, but you don't need to go in huge detail.
No problem. I'll try and do a minute summary. So essentially, in Hackney, mental health needs, and especially complex mental health needs, are increasingly becoming a concern. This proposed new integrated mental health network service is designed to support residents who have complex mental health needs, who struggle with intersecting disadvantages, and who often find it difficult to get the support that they need. The new service is going to build on a previous high-performing model. It will continue to offer holistic, person-centered mental health support with a strong emphasis on service user choice control. The new service will also increase the number of community providers. It will increase integration with other external mental health providers, as well as other relevant services. It will include a new lower-level preventative opportunities model, and has increased flexibility with a focus on continuous learning. So that's some of the key changes and points. I'm happy to take any questions on the paper.
Okay, thank you. I will have one question which I'm going to ask in the confidential bit of the meeting. But does anyone? Well, Councillor Kennedy and then Councillor Woodley. Oh, Councillor Woodley then.
I suppose the obvious question around having 65 expressions of interest and only one bid. What's our understanding of why so many fell back? Oh, sorry, that's wrong feedback. Is it better if I just speak?
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. Did you want to add any more, or is that?
I was only going to elaborate that I think we need to note that City and Hackney has the highest rates of mental illness in the country. That's a stark fact, and if only 3% contribution towards cost is coming from City, then that's very reflective of the situation in Hackney. And just to say that I absolutely welcome the understanding of intersectional disadvantages, commitment to a holistic approach. I am concerned, however, how this integrated approach will overcome recruitment challenges and the backlog and the waiting times that we know are impacting on everyone in Hackney, and how our sort of core contractor will oversee those smaller community providers who will surely have been impacted by that recruitment challenge in particular. So within the KPIs, where we're looking at performance in terms of benefits to the service users, are we also looking at how we, I guess, keep an eye on and support those smaller community providers? So sorry, that's about 4 questions in one. I can break it down if helpful.
That's right. I'll make a start, and I'll probably miss some bits. So please, we can come back to anything I've missed at the end, if that's all right. But firstly, your question around obviously only being the one provider. Obviously, we would have preferred more, and we did try quite hard to contact lots of potential providers. And actually, although there was one bid, it's made up of quite a large number of providers. So quite a few are covered. And it is a really specialist service, and requires even more specialist provider to be able to be that main contractor. And we, as I said, we did try quite hard to try and identify, and we did contact a number who we thought could do that role. So it is sort of a shame. We are planning a lessons learned session to explore this further and see if there's anything more we could have done. And it was an open procurement, and we promoted it really widely. Also worth mentioning, we recently had some one-off funding which we used to help fund some more community providers to try and make sure that they had the sort of skills and experience of working with clinicians in this way, to make sure again that there were as many opportunities as possible. So completely accept there might be lessons learned, and that is something we're going to look into, but we are confident that we did a lot, and it is possibly a reflection of the complex nature of the service, which is why we only had the one bid. In terms of the holistic service, I mean, I could go on for a long time, but essentially it's really aiming to support a whole person's needs. So not just focusing on sort of a mental health condition or a mental health illness, but actually understanding that there are so many things that relate to that, and especially where we have these residents with complex needs. So, making sure that they're supported with debt, employment, housing issues, and obviously it's not necessarily up to the network itself to provide all of that support and be specialist in every area. But as I said, one of the current incumbent provider already does this, but it was even bigger focus in the new service. And you'll have probably seen we've also got a KPI around partnership working, and that's to make sure that actually, as well as providing a very broad service in terms of the support offered and making sure it's sort of personal to the individual, that the service is linking up with all the other relevant services in Hackney, and where possible and appropriate, having kind of shared care plans or similar, to make sure that actually it's not lots of different services supporting one person, but actually a collaborative effort to make sure that that really meets their need. I'm sorry, I can't remember if I've covered all of the points now. Or,
I think it was around the challenge in recruitment and how the contractor would oversee, because that would really impact some of the smaller providers more than others. In some cases, you can bring an agency, and others that just won't be appropriate. So and catching up on the waiting times, and it's just such a challenging moment, isn't it? I'm glad you mentioned poverty and how that's tipping more people into sort of mental distress. So I just want to ensure that there's that contractor is able to oversee this work, and where is that reflected in the KPIs, I suppose, for the service providers, not just the service users.
Yeah, so in terms of the recruitment, obviously it is a really big challenge in mental health services at the moment. In terms of the providers, they are all existing and have staff who can come in to do this, and because it is mostly incumbent providers, those staff are already in place, and being well established organisations that sort of they're better placed than, say, a new organisation would be to meet those challenges, and have been meeting those challenges up until this point. So the fact that they have continued to do that suggests that they should continue to do going forwards. And with the smaller providers, it is a concern, but equally, because they are so embedded in the community that they are supporting, and actually that is often a resource for those specialist staff. So it would be more of a concern if we were moving to a new provider, or actually relevantly, if we were looking to insource the service and start completely new. But because there is that incumbent provider that we have got, that's a sort of network already there, and we aren't anticipating any staffing challenges with going forwards. Not more than the usual anyway.
Councillor Woodley, is that all right?
Yeah, just if the lessons learned report could just be sent to us as a for noting, that'd be great.
Great, that's useful. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Yes, I'd love to see the lessons learned report as well. Thank you, because obviously that's very concerning to go down from 65 expressions of interest to 1. I do note from the list in our appendix that many of those initial 65 are those smaller community organisations who are then part of the network itself, but quite a few larger established regional and national organisations. And in an ideal world, you would want to have seen 3-4 of those come forward to make final bids at the end. So we do need to look into that and work out why that didn't happen. The other thing, Jennifer, because of my cabinet responsibility, I think we've touched on this before, but I wanted if you could just give us a bit of reassurance, please, that where you've got a lead provider, we managed to check that where certain services are being provided, they don't over-favour themselves. Because, as you all know, we have had some of our smaller local community organisations level that at the lead provider before as an accusation that they tend to favour the allocation of service provision towards themselves, when perhaps it's a skill that they might not have.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair question, and I think it's fair to say that this was I'm sure it's always a challenge in this sort of or setup, and I'm not saying it doesn't still exist to some extent, but the big issues where this was a problem were resolved with change in management a few years ago, and also sort of increased support from commissioners. So even now, I think it's not as much of a problem as it was. we had really positive feedback from some of the current subcontractors that actually they felt that things have improved a lot, but also not wanting things to get any worse, and actually if anything get things better. We have included requirements in the new specification around making sure that the main contractor really does engage with and work with all the statutory providers, and that everything has to be fair, including there's a sort of flexible funding aspect, and that has to be presented to us, the commissioners, to approve, and that has to be evidence. So if the new provider were to try and the main contractor were to try and move more funding to themselves, they would need to provide a very strong evidence case for why that would be, and they wouldn't be able to do so without consulting us as the commissioners. So we've retained that as a control, and it's actually worth noting that the percentage for the main contractor is significantly less than it used to be, which is exactly how we've managed to get a greater number of community providers in this new contract. So they're already taking a much smaller percentage than they were. So not saying it's going to solve every single issue, but we are aware of that, and it's being measured as one of the things that we're looking to measure as well, around actually we're asking them to gather feedback from subcontractors on how they feel as well, and how that's going. So hopefully that will do as much as possible to ensure that doesn't happen.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? We in July we went through the business case for this at this committee, didn't we? And we asked quite a lot of questions there about some of the more detailed things. So I think they can be about insourcing other things. So the point of reporting that there. Could just make that I too would ask the same questions we've got about only having one provider, but it's not just about the issues of the process of how we got there. It's also about how we might deal with the potential risks that presents to us if something happens. Don't know if you've got any comments on that, or you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of obviously in an ideal world we would have had a more competitive process, although we were really pleased with the bid, and are confident that the new service will be a really high quality and an improvement on the existing one. The main contractor at the very, obviously there are a number of smaller providers, and by having smaller providers as well, that if any one of them were to have issues, that will have a lower impact on the overall service and allow it to make changes to solve that. And in terms of the main contractor, it's a very well-established large organisation. They've faced, as an incumbent provider, they've faced funding challenges before. We've had to make reductions to the budget previously. Obviously COVID presented all kinds of challenges for a mental health service, and even to some extent the current financial pressures from inflation, and they've dealt with them all really well, and we've not had any concerns. So aside from what you can't control, there's nothing that flags as a big concern for us with the new provider. Okay,
right. I think just for completeness, I should put on record that my partner Elizabeth Close used to chair Hackney Mind. We worked out, since we couldn't remember when it was at least 15 years ago. It wasn't a prejudicial interest, but I think for completeness it's worth just noting in the records. Okay then, so welcome Deputy Mayor Bramble has now joined us. Okay, so if we can agree the recommendations as set out on page 20 to agree the award of the contract as set out, and then note also that we have asked for that the lessons learned report should be circulated to members when it's prepared.
Agreed and noted.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you then move to item 8, which is the external advertising contract. So as Jonathan Lyons, I think, is going to introduce this report. Again, I'll make the point that the members will have read the report, so you don't need to go into a huge amount of detail in your introduction, but some words of introduction would be welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee and all. I'm pleased to report back to the committee the procurement of the
sorry, we're having a difficulty hearing here. Is that?
Can you hear me?
That's a bit better. Yeah.
So I'll get closer to the mic. Sorry if I've got a big face on the screen. So I'm pleased to report back to the committee that the new external advertising contract was completed successfully. While we received a good amount of interest from the market, only 4 bids were completed by our deadline.
Did you? Sorry, we're
This
still having.
procurement-
Sorry, Jonathan, still having difficulty hearing. I don't know.
Bear with me 1 second.
No, so I don't know if it's your end or ours, but
Hi, can you hear me better now?
that is better. Yeah.
Right, let me try that again.
Sorry.
So I was just saying, while we received a good amount of interest from the market, only 4 bids were completed by our deadline time. The procurement looks to deliver on an overall reduction in advertising sites across the borough, enhances our out-of-home communications channel, whilst significantly increases our income subject to planning permission. The procurement pricing section was split into a 40-10 split on annual income and a one-off social value offer. The report identifies the winning bid paying a one-off 150,000 social value offer, and an annual income followed 620,000 year on year. It's also worth noting that the council is not investing any capital funding nor maintenance costs over the duration of the contract. The lifetime of the contract has been reduced from 25 years to 10 years, plus an option to extend by a further 5, and is not tied to a ridiculously long contract as previously was. All of the bids submitted were of good quality, with supplier 2 providing the best financial offer, both in terms of a one-off social value and annual income. The winning bidder provides excellent energy credentials, including sourcing all energy from sustainable sources in the upgrade to digital technology. They're ISO accredited for environmental management and work with a number of other accredited bodies, including Planet Mark, AdNet Zero, UN Global Compact, and Carbon Disclosure Project, to ensure that they meet their own zero net objectives, plus help us in terms of the energy consumption that we know will come from these units. We also have a guaranteed shutdown of screens from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. to offset any unavoidable emissions. The winning bidder also works with a number of charity partners, including the Wildlife Trust, Keep Britain Tidy, and City for Trees. Trees for Cities, beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I just, before we ask the questions, note that a revised report with the costings has been published today and is on the website. Okay, so first I've got, as I said, some written questions from which I will read from a member of the public. Councillor Vinnie Lovett has some questions, but first, if I could ask members of the committee if they have any questions. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Could you just, I know it's in the papers, but for the purpose of the record, I know you did quite a lot of work with both policy officers and planning officers. And in the appendices, you've showed the considerable work you've done on the sites, which I think even involved walking some of the sites with a visually impaired resident and one of our local councillors. Could you just expand on that a bit more to say how you got to the sites and where we're proposing on siting these? Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Yes, we worked with planning, street scene, environmental waste, our policy team, and some councillors to engage all of stakeholders. We followed a planning performance approach through planning, which was led by planning, that delivered the pre-application report, which deals with planning matters. That specific report led to the deactivation of units within Shoreditch. We then looked at environmental waste and how we would facilitate the public toilets that we have in Dalston, and those have been included in the report. Our final consultation was with a councillor and a sight impaired, well, a blind resident who we walked the A10 from Shackwell, well, from Dalston Square all the way up to Shackwell Lane and up the A10. This was to identify specifically issues surrounding our residents with visual disabilities. We clearly took consultation from that to adjust our specification, in ensuring that all or any potential sites in future would be located at a 90-degree angle to the pavement, and any technologies, which there are quite a few of now, would be built into each of the units, plus allow us to potentially offer visually impaired residents a technology supplement to use with their equipment whilst moving around the borough. In terms of planning on the pre-app, we then did a further assessment on the remaining sites which had no objection or a slight move allocated against them, and at that time we reduced the sites down from 54 to 31 sites, which is a 43% decrease across the borough.
Thank you. Councillor Woodley, is there any questions? Or Councillor Brown? No. Okay. So, Councillor Binny-Lubbock, you presented quite a long list of questions, but I understand you're going to ask a short selection of them here now, and we'll get you a written response and everything else. Can we make sure that's circulated to the committee as well, the responses? Yeah. Councillor Binny-Lubbock.
Would you prefer I ask the three questions I've lined up all together?
Yes.
Yeah. So the first question is, assuming that a number of the advertising sites get refused, either through the planning process or with TfL, is there a level of income at which proceeding with the new digital units becomes resource ineffective and would jeopardise the contract? And would that also affect the one-off payment? So if only half of the sites go ahead, would the one-off payment for social use be halved? My next question is, it's not fully clear from the papers whether or not these billboards will have to go through the planning process, some or all of them, to be open to objections from residents. It's clear that some of them are going to change location, there's a change in size, and there's no previous record of their permission. And as we saw from the recent planning application for the sites in Shoreditch, there was quite a big number of objections that were put to them. So just wondering if that will still be open to the public to comment on. And finally, with regards to the advertising policy, which I'm very glad to see finally materialising and having some really good things in there, obviously it's a shame that there's not things around high carbon industries. But throughout the life of the contract, is it possible to amend this advertising policy as new products come to light, or new information comes around how we could maybe designate things as high carbon products and services? Those are my three.
Stiles?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Binny-Lubbock. So I'm just going to go through kind of your first question. My answers will be 1A and 1B. So assuming whether a site will or will not receive planning permission or consent before it has been submitted undermines the independence of the planning authority and process. We have not made any assumptions and therefore not calculated any such answers in terms of when it would be ineffective or jeopardize the contract. Again, I'd like to remind the councillor and the committee that there's no capital investment nor maintenance costs to the council associated with this contract. In terms of the one-off payment, one of the losing bidders placed a minimum of 20 sites in order to activate their social value offer. The other 3 did not. As we've told bidders that all sites will need planning permission, there may be a risk that the winning bidder would want to renegotiate this value if the number of sites that they receive from planning drops significantly. In terms of your second question, is it clear that these will all be in the planning process? All planning permission applications will be live on the portal, and I've had that response from the planning team today. With the objection is likely to raise a replacement sign for this location. Does that mean planning department and the public at large? The pre-application advice focused solely on the planning merits of the proposal. Planning consent is granted by the relevant authority, which in this instance will be Hackney Council. And with regards to the advertising and sponsorship question, yes, 1.3 number 6 indicates that the policy will be subject to ongoing updates by the council. However, it is recommended that whatever requires updating or inclusion will need a robust source of evidence base, similar to the current evidence that we have for high sugar and salts and fats.
Thank you very much.
You Tim, happy?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we'll get a response to the rest of your questions. I've received questions from ex-councillor Vincent Stopps. Welcome. Oh, there you go. Sorry. Which I will, as I said earlier, read out. Although I have given prior notice to the officers, so hopefully get them. There appears to be no reference to TfL being the highway authority for most of these hoardings. The report says planning consent is needed from TfL as well as Hackney. However, TfL is not a planning authority, it is the highway authority. There is no mention in the legal comments about any Highways Act requirements and permissions from TfL. Mr. Stopps has been told by Hackney that there are no communication, has been no communication with TfL regarding permission to award the contract for advertising and its payments. So we seek your comments on that. The second question is, the only public benefit is financial and a reference to how beneficial communication with the public is. There is no mention of the proportion of airtime the council will get from the contract. 10% of the airtime has been suggested previously. There is no mention that with the extant contract, the council has 50% of the use of these boards. This is the crux of the legality of this issue. Is there a real public benefit from erecting structures on the highway, or are they commercial advertising? And third and last question, the pre-application planning advice was undertaken in 21, though it is dated March 22. There is no mention in the report that there have been subsequently been real applications for 9 of these structures that have been rejected comprehensively by the planning service on the basis of its adopted policies. There has also been other very similar applications refused, none were granted. And I welcome your comments on that. I read those out verbatim as you saw.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you could, Mr. Lyons, if you want to respond to those 3 questions.
Yeah, I'll respond to them. Our response from planning to the first question is the pre-application advice focuses solely on the planning merits of the proposal. Planning consent is granted by the relevant planning authority, which in this case is Hackney Central. Any other required consent lies outside of the planning authority's control and is separate to the planning process. There's no mention in the legal section, as we are firstly seeking approval to award the contract at this point. Point 5.8 in the paper clearly highlights that planning permission will need to be carried out on any future sites, which would be the time to engage with TfL if and when an agreement is required. Response to the second question, Mr. Stopps, is correct that the contract would deliver 10% airtime or 6 minutes per hour on a looping basis. This is fairly standard for councils, but is also standard for most brands to receive the exact same time frame unless they pay considerably more for activation. The council, however, receives this for free. Upgrading to the digital units means we are able to quickly display multiple public information campaigns in real time, providing more opportunities for services to communicate during the same time period, which we don't have at the moment with 50% of a single campaign that lasts for 2 weeks. So this means that we can air a service change campaign, a consultation, and a cultural event all at the same time without having to wait for the 1 or B-side print phase to be updated, which again only happens every 2 weeks. This is less flexible for time-sensitive information. We have also demonstrated public benefit through the pandemic and more recently the polio outbreak in London, using QR codes on all of our outdoor campaigns to allow residents to find out information about vaccinations in their locations. The recent polio vaccination campaign has received 65 QR code scans across the borough, which was included in the appendices. Lastly, we have a clause in the contract that allows the council to override sites with local or national emergency information should we require within a certain time frame. And the income has generated has been used to fund a number of other potential social value activities. Response to question 3. Our response from planning is the pre-application advice predated the 9 applications that were subsequently refused as a result of the assessment work and performance planning approach the council followed during 2021. The pre-application advice focused solely on the planning merits of the proposed sites that were put forward. The 9 sites Mr. Stops refers to were refused planning permission as a result of our assessment carried out in 2021. It has always been the intention of this work towards reducing clutter in the public realm, and we have done this through reducing the overall number of sites from 54 to 31, which is a 43% decrease across the borough, while still maintaining an important communication channel and increasing our income, which will be used hopefully to offset other social value projects. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just come back about the Highways Act permissions, the TfL Highways Act permissions. So my understanding what you said is you are basically going to do that at the end of the process. Is that correct? Are there any risks in that?
We have been in communication with TfL, and they're aware of all of the work that we have done. The specific contracts or agreements that Mr. Stops refers to will take place, or will potentially take place if they're required when we go to planning permission. Yes, there is always a risk that TfL will object to the sites that are on their routes. But this has been identified throughout the reports that have been provided to this committee and other committees over the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from members?
I'm not clear I understand what the mitigation there is to that risk. Okay.
Does Mr. Lyons want to say more about that?
There is none.
I think when it comes to legal and regulation, I would probably defer to my legal colleagues who I know are potentially present. I don't know if Patrick or Sam, you wanted to add to that.
Sorry, is someone going to add to that? Patrick, yeah.
Patrick Roger, Legal Services. Yeah, the basis of this award is a commercial contract for services. In the future, if necessary consents aren't needed, they will be applied for in the context of what the particular provider is seeking. And as Jonathan has pointed out, that is a decision to be made in the future based on what consents are needed and what is applied for.
Okay. Okay then. So any more questions from members? No. Okay. So if we could. No. Okay. So if we can move then to the recommendation on page 118, and basically is to agree with all the contract that's set out. You happy to do that?
Agree.
Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much. And thanks to the officers for presenting the report and all the work they've done in putting this together. And if we could move to then item 9, which is the front entrance door replacement programme. Who's going to do this?
Hi, how are you doing? Sinead here.
Sinead Burke, yeah?
Yes,
Is it Sinead's going to present this?
Yeah. So I'm here to a presentation, and my colleague Ola Akinbinu is also here. So we'll jointly take the questions. I note that you just wanted a quick summary of the report. First of all, my name is Sinead Burke, Head of Property and Asset Management, and Ola is our Contract Delivery Manager who will run this project, hopefully, subject to approval and all that. What we are looking to do is award 2 contracts for the installation of fire-safe front entrance doors to properties which are qualifying for needing a replacement door and which are in buildings which are 6 stories or higher. I say qualifying because obviously we have included within the scope of the contract all properties, but obviously every property, it's subject to a survey about what the existing door is, and to some extent, particularly on the 6 to 9 story blocks, some of the fire escape arrangements and just the fire risk assessment that we have for the building. Above 10 stories, all the fire risk assessment doesn't change because all the buildings have internal communal areas, which always requires a fire safe door. But some of the 6 to 9 story blocks, they're open to the air, and sometimes the requirements are different. But the contract includes all of them, and we will only replace the ones where the existing door and the fire safety requirements require a new door. We've allowed a value in the recommendation which assumes that all the doors need replacing. That may not be required. The term of the contract is an initial 1-year term with an option to extend for a further year. So we have 2 contractors for up to 2 years. The reason for the 2 contractors was partly to help the delivery, so that we have 2 contractors, we have an increased delivery route, and it's also a bit of a risk management. Should one of them fail to perform, we have another one operating, so that we know we go out with this piece of work, and we have options around the delivery route. The preferred bidder, the one who came top on the tender, is to get more of the work. That was the kind of incentive to kind of win the tender outright. The tender itself was operated via an external framework, which is operated by an organisation called Southeast Consortium, which Hackney are a member of. And so they have essentially drawn up a framework. So they did what we call the initial going out to market stage of the tender, and they would have identified, I think it's 8 companies who applied to join the framework, and they were assessed as having the relevant qualifications. The framework specifically is around what we call passive fire protection. So it is not an active system. So the door provides just in and of itself provides you with fire protection. What we call an active fire protection system would be something like a fire alarm, which actively does something in a fire to help you. So we did an expression of interest over that tender. 6 of the tenderers were interested and bid on the works. We got a very good standard of application. I have to say, Ola and I, with another colleague, did the tender evaluation, and we're quite pleased with the outcome that we got, that we have these 2 tenderers to nominate. The plan in terms of delivery is again to not to just issue all of these doors at once, but that they would be issued in batches of kind of 600-800 doors at a time. That allows us to get ahead with the surveys, but also again enables us to manage the program and make sure there isn't too much instructions for work out there at one time. Obviously, as part of the tender process, contractors were asked very robust questions around their ability to deliver these kind of works, around their specifications, the qualifications that they were going to use, the staff that they were going to use to install the doors, because we've set pretty strict requirements around these doors. Obviously, there's been a huge review of fire safety standards post Grenfell, and on buildings like this, which are high rise and are the higher risk blocks that we have quite stringent standards on the kind of doors that we can put in. They also have, which is set out in the report for longer reading, quite a number of things that they're doing around sustainability and social value. They have also committed to quite a nice range of options to make sure that residents are comfortable with the door, that they get to have some choice around the design. We have limited design options. There's a leaflet included with the appendices, which shows the kind of range of options. Like I said, because the certification scheme is so tight, there's not very many different kind of types that you can offer, because each exact design of door would have to go through a fire test. But we can offer glazed screens, we can offer different colours, and we can offer a panelled kind of design. But the contractors will work with residents to choose those, because ultimately, while it's a fire safe door, we're trying to be cognizant of the fact that it is still someone's front door. is the front door to their home. We want to make sure that they have some element of choice in that, and that they feel really happy with the door, not just fire safety, but that it looks really smart, and also that it's very secure. Actually, the doors will also meet all the secure by design standards and the new Partel standards for thermal insulation. So that's kind of a summary of the.
That's great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that
Thank
introduction.
you.
Right, I have one question if no one else asked it, but Councillor Brown, Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just on the doors, you said that you were limited on the spec. I'm going to make the assumption that that doesn't mean that that would undermine safety in any way, but I wondered if that had an impact on sustainability and cost. And just happy to hear you talked about residents and resident inputs and their opportunity to have a conversation about it. But given the amount of doors potentially that we'll need, are there enough sample doors across the borough for residents to be able to engage? Because obviously if people have to travel from one side of the borough to another, that for different people, for different sorts of reasons, that isn't always the most easiest thing to do. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bramble. Shall I just ask, I've got a question from Muriel Gordon, who's the Stamford Hill Neighbourhood Panel Chair. So I'll ask it now because it's quite linked to the one that you've just asked there. And she says that leaseholders in particular are keen to see the type of door being offered, as many are expected to pay for it. Last time round we had great difficulty in this request being met, as there was apparently one sample door which was in the Shoreditch area and the leaseholders were expected to travel if they wanted to see it. Could I please ask that the contractor has sample doors available to be located in whatever areas work is taking place, and in our case Stamford Hill area? There are community halls in Joseph Court and or Lincoln Court where they could be made available. And this is rather than expecting residents to have to travel to other areas of the borough, which is not always easy. And ask for comments on that. Okay, so we could deal with those two together. You should have had notice of that question.
Yeah. Okay. So
Particularly Deputy Mayor Bramble's question.
Yes, I'll start with that one. So the specification is limited because there's not very many doors on the market that can meet the new design standards. And essentially what happened was, in a very kind of basic kind of understanding that I have of these things, is somebody would get a door and they would test it. And they'd make a few changes and they'd sort of say the changes kind of probably were about the same, you know, standard of the door. And now they've said, no, if you want to sell a door with a glazed panel this big, that door has to be tested. If the glazed panel is that big, it's a different test. So there's not so many different products. Like if you went to get a door for your house, there's just thousands of different styles of door. We don't have so many that we can choose from in these buildings. So the design, it's just limited in terms of what's available on the market. But on the other hand, you know, there's not a huge amount of variation that we have at the moment anyway, you know, and like I said, the color allows some choice. It does have an impact on cost, and it does, I suppose you'd have to say it does have an impact on sustainability, but you might say it's a positive one. So the doors that we're using are solid timber doors. We are not using any what they call composite doors, which are plastic or plastic combined with other materials. So they are timber and they do have an incredibly long lifespan. We're expecting 30 years from these doors. They do have an impact on cost, though. They're expensive. They're expensive doors, so they're a lot more than you would pay if you did not need a fire safe door. But they come with very high standards. We have requested very high standards of installation. We've also asked for a lot of standards around how we engage with residents, and that comes at a cost. So to move on to the question about being able to see sample doors, there were so we started this program under our contract one. We called it a main framework, which is expired, and that's why we're continuing the program hopefully under this new contract. So under the previous contract, we did have sample doors available in the area we were working. It's just that we weren't working in the area that leaseholder made the question. So what we had said is when we come to work in your area, the sample door will be available in that area, and we hadn't gotten on to that area yet. That was all. So we group all the blocks geographically. So we target the blocks in an area. So we'll continue to, we'll start off with, on this program, with all the ones in the 10+ range because they're the highest risk, and we'll do all the ones in one area and then in another area. We have them all grouped. When the contractor is working in that area, the sample door will be available for them to see in that area. So it will be local. It might not be on their estate. It's very hard to move these sample doors. They're incredibly heavy. So there'd be one, say, in an area like the size of our area offices or something. But the 10-story plus program is split into 7 regions, so like a 7th of Hackney. The contractors are also offering, though, other ranges of ways that residents can help choose the door. So one of them I know has offered kind of visual mock-ups, where they, this kind of thing, where they do a kind of a computer-aided, mock-up of what it looks like in your flat. They've got design choice palettes. We've got the leaflet that we've put in, which shows some of the design choices. And they've offered some meetings as well. They will also, both of them, allow a cool-off period. So if you choose a door to a certain design and then 3 days later you think, oh, actually, maybe it's not a good idea to have a glazed window in my door, maybe I don't really like the idea of that, you can change your mind. So they have a 1-week period in which you can change your mind.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Kennedy?
Thank you, Sinead. Obviously, as politicians, we knock on a lot of doors. We see an awful lot of doors. And there were some doors that we put on, and I don't want to be rude about a maker of doors. I think I know who made them, but after a couple of years, especially where they were exposed to a lot of sunlight, there were a number of these doors where just the top cover of them started crinkling and peeling off and looking absolutely terrible. And I noticed it's in your KPI 2 for customer satisfaction. It reads as though the customer satisfaction question might really just be how quickly was the door fitted. It's about the process rather than going back. So I suppose my question is, are we then subsequently insured? Have they given us some sort of undertaking, these 2 providers, that if there's a problem after a certain amount of time, they will come back and fix it? What's the arrangement?
Okay.
Basically, how to make sure we don't repeat past mistakes.
Yeah. So, first of all, that thing that the foil layer that you refer to is not on the doors that we've specified here. So they are solid timber doors. So the first thing is making sure that we don't, buy the same type of door that failed the last time. And then the second thing is we've got quite some tough requirements around the guarantees. Ola, I don't know if you want to come in and say something about the guarantee. It's about 30 years or 20 years on some of the parts, isn't it? Sorry, I was there about putting you on the spot. But we've quite extensive guarantees that we have in place on these doors, and then if we have any defects with them, we can call them back within that period and have them attend to the problem. There's slightly different requirements based on, like, the iron, like moving parts tend to always have a lower guarantee than the frame. So the frame, I think, is 30 years, but say the ironmongery is only about 10 because it's subject to a lot more wear and tear. And then really what we have to be in a position to do is make sure that we have this at the end logged very carefully on our system so that we do call back the manufacturer rather than, just doing it ourselves or something like that. To be honest with you, I'm not quite sure the arrangements with the previous manufacturer who you've not named, but I understand there were some conversations at the time where they did replace a number of the doors. And what happened with that previous issues. It continues happening, doesn't it? It's like some of them that happen quite quickly, and then some of it just because some of them it took 3 years for things to sort of peel, and some of them are only maybe peeling now, and it becomes perhaps it's gone outside of the warranty period.
Laurie wants to add to here.
Yeah, as Sinead, I think in section 6.1.6 of your report, I don't know whether you've got it.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
You might just want to talk to
Oh,
that.
it is 30 years. There we go. 10 years on the ironmonger. I'm sure I was right.
Oh,
Thank you.
so do you want to talk to that? Or?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was explaining. So that's the guarantee that we have in place, which is quite a high level of guarantee. And like I sort of mentioned earlier, the specification that we have is quite tight and it is impacting on the cost. But at the same time, we need to make sure that these doors are, they are the kind of line of defense that people in tall buildings have against fire, but also against antisocial behavior, security, etc. And so we feel like it's the right call to invest in them and make sure the quality is there. But that line actually does set out some of the terms of the guarantee, and then within those periods the manufacturer is obliged to return to rectify the problem. I think the other thing is what we're sort of hopeful of in the industry is that the increase in the testing regime also produces a higher quality of product on the market more generally, because the doors are tested so much to such a higher standard now.
I was going to raise a similar point, but I saw that they were solid timber painted doors, and absolutely appreciate that quality has to be the number one sort of decision making item, really, is particularly post Grenfell. But I do wonder how we're supporting leaseholders that opt in to have these doors. I mean, can they spread the payments? Given you've got the 30-year guarantee, that's great for those that are kind of planning to live in their place for a long time. But if they're not going to be there for long, that sounds like it's going to be quite an investment. So how are we supporting?
Okay, so most of the leaseholders, most of them will not be asked to pay for a replacement door. The council has already decided in 2019, which is set out in the related decisions, that circumstances about how the doors were installed originally, or a majority type of the door originally in about 2008, 2010, that kind of time period, means that we have decided if we put a door in then that it needs to come out, we'll pay for it. Some other leaseholders do need to pay for the door. They can opt in, like you say. And the reason it's opt in is because we don't really own the doors technically always under the lease. The leaseholder owns the door. But the leasehold team do offer quite a range of options around how you can spread the payments for any works. So I could potentially share a more detailed breakdown if I get it off my colleague Judith. But we allow works to be paid back over quite a long period of time, and I think with very kind of attractive terms. And my understanding is we have slightly more attractive terms for resident leaseholders than for non-resident leaseholders, just acknowledging the kind of household financial limitations that you might have. So there's a range of terms there, but like I said, there's kind of a minority of them who have to pay it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, any further questions from members? I have one. We're looking to do, I think, up to 9,000 doors, but the contract is a year plus, it's maximum of 2 years. Are we confident we'll be able to do that? Because it doesn't. I mean, I'm no expert, but it doesn't seem an awful lot of time to do 9,000 doors.
So we let me just do a little quick. So what we have, so the contractor who is the top bidding contractor, when they get up to speed, have a KPI to deliver 50 doors a week. And the second contractor should will
that doesn't come to 9,000 over 2 years, does it? 50 a week.
No, we have two contractors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted. Carry on.
Yeah. So we have, because I'm trying to do, I'm being slow. I'm trying to do the calculations on my phone. So we don't, like I said, we may not install all of the doors because some of them, we go there and we realize the door is actually fine as it is. We'll survey all the doors. We won't go just replacing any door that's completely fine as it is. And some of the blocks, depending on the fire safety regulations, that might also be a mitigation, that we don't need to do all of them. But both contractors have a KPI, so that we hope to have the delivery. One of them will be slightly higher than the other, and we should have a delivery around 80 doors a week for 2 years, which is quite a lot of doors.
That's still not 9,000, is it? Is that? Are we saying we don't really expect to do 9,000?
Yeah.
We
Well,
are.
that's 8,000 doors.
8,000.
8,000, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and like I said, we probably won't install absolutely every 9,000 doors. The other thing is, the other thing, and this is sort of like a really boring detail of how the contract works, is the 2 years is technically the term of the PPC contract. The PPC is the term period in which we can make call-offs from the contract, so we can issue orders of works. So we can, so normally when you do these contracts, you end up delivering works for probably about 6 months after the end of it. So, for example, I have a PPC contract that ended in August 21, and the project is still on site because it was ordered. The order was raised in August 21, and the project is still ongoing. So we can issue new instructions for 2 years, but it really gives you, on this kind of contract, about 2.5 years worth of work.
Right. Okay, that makes good sense. Okay.
So yeah, we definitely worked this out. I'm just trying to do the.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't ask.
No, indeed. I'm sorry. I'm sort of with my little phone in the background doing some calculations. Going, oh goodness, but no. Thank you. That's all right.
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, another big and important piece of work for the council, but excellent. We'll be doing that for our residents over the next couple of years. Yeah, can we then turn to the recommendations on page 232 and agree to approve the awards of the contracts as set out there?
Agreed.
Agreed. And I said, can we respond in writing to Miss Gould, as well as the comments you made here too, and then copy the members of the committee? I think we'd be advised to take note of her suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We have no confidential minutes to consider, I understand, so she's slowly in case it's, does any member want to raise anything, under the confidential items? And there, okay, therefore we don't need to move formally to that. And I will conclude by, since there's no other exempt business, to conclude the meeting at 6:05, yeah? So thank you, everyone, both members and all the officers who have attended and presented reports tonight for coming tonight, and obviously all the huge amount of work that you've put together, you do in putting together reports and awarding these contracts. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
And the next meeting's on the 13th of February.
Right. I'm going to make